crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with host David Lamb and the attorneys of Hollis Wright.
Good evening and welcome into the attorneys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. An interesting topic of conversation, auto dealer fraud. What that means, what that's about, that's our topic of conversation tonight. So we're going to cover some neat ground, so you're going to want to stick around for sure. A couple of ground rules. The show's always better when you are involved. Call, text, email, however you choose to be involved. Some numbers to know, so if you have a pen and paper, you're going to want to make note of these. The text number is 205-670-1949. Or you can give us a call at 205-324-3600 or 844-529-8255. That is 844-LAW-TALK. And attorneys from Hollis Wright standing by live, so the opportunity for some free, confidential, off-air advice. Take advantage of that while the show is on the air. Okay. So the formalities out of the way. Let's introduce tonight's, the host who's going to drive this train, Carter Clay, partner at Hollis Wright. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, David. I hope you're doing well.
Doing well, thank you.
Yeah, tonight it's going to be a little bit unusual. We've never done a show quite like this before, and there will be an aspect of the show involving automobile dealership type fraud, but that's only going to be one component. There are a lot of great dealerships in the Birmingham and surrounding areas, and so we don't want to give off the impression that we're here tonight to be critical of automobile dealerships. Because that's not what we're here about. What we're here about is to educate the public about what they need to know when buying either a new or used automobile, and the repercussions that can occur if they don't do their due diligence and if they're not informed and if they don't read the documents that they have in front of them. There's some really staggering and interesting statistics that we're going to be talking about here tonight that the viewers will also see as part of the show here this evening. And we're very fortunate to have Thomas Donald here with us tonight. He's an outstanding attorney here in this area, and he practices, as I understand it, in handling claims arising from the purchase of automobiles. And there's actually a unique area of the law that I guess if the viewers already know about this, then they've probably had a problem in the past in purchasing an automobile, but it's called the lemon laws. And I think most states probably have this type of law out there, and we're going to be talking in great deal about that here this evening. But Thomas, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. I appreciate you having me here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and the nature of your legal practice, and kind of how you got started in handling claims arising from this area.
I've been practicing with Michael Parrish, another attorney in Birmingham, for the last 10 years. And our area of law is generally considered consumer law. So we represent consumers in issues with businesses. And a consumer is just somebody like you and me. We never represent the businesses against the consumers. And this touches on just about anything that can happen to a person, anything from banking or financing issues to, in this particular case, automobile issues. Because for most people, the biggest purchase they're going to make is a car. These things, you know, $100,000 used to be an expensive car, but we see with financing and everything added in, that's not unusual these days.
Yeah, of course you got home purchase, but in terms of personal property, that the automobile purchase probably would be one of the biggest items somebody would purchase in their lifetime.
That's right.
And so really, when you break down the purchase of an automobile, either you're purchasing a new automobile or you're purchasing a used automobile. And there are really some distinctions and differences between those two in terms of the purchaser's rights, correct?
That's right. The biggest issue, I believe, comes into the warranty issue. With a new car, you're likely to get a factory warranty, and you may have other warranties or service contracts that come with that. Oftentimes, when somebody buys a used car, and it doesn't matter if it's a very inexpensive car or an expensive used car, oftentimes there is no factory warranty. And it is truly an as-is sale. So when the buyer drives off the lot, if it makes it over the curb, then fails after that, they're not likely to be able to get any sort of a recourse from the dealership on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's jump right in and talk about the lemon law. What is the lemon law, and do you know how the name got started of the lemon law itself?
No, we were talking about this earlier. Maybe a lemon is just something that leaves a real sour taste in your mouth. A lemon law isn't just any car with a problem, but in Alabama it refers to a new car. And generally, you have to bring the car back to the dealership or to the manufacturer's repair center within a year or 12,000 miles to be able to be entitled to make a limit law claim. And a typical issue would be where you've got some defect that cannot be repaired that affects the use, safety, or value of the car.
And I think the point that you raised just a second ago is critical, is that the lemon laws only apply to new automobile purchases, correct?
That's correct.
Not to used automobiles.
That's correct.
So if somebody's out there and they're evaluating buying a new car versus a used car, one of the benefits that buying a new automobile would be that they could avail themselves of the protections of these lemon laws if they were to get a car that was found to be defective.
That's absolutely right. Typically, you'll get a written warranty from the manufacturer on a new car. But even if it's a used car and you have a written warranty, there are other federal statutes and state statutes that would apply to that. So just buying a used car doesn't mean that you're going to be left hanging. But by buying a new car, you can at least avail yourself of the Alabama lemon law if you have a problem.
And you mentioned some of the criteria, I guess, that you have to establish in order to be able to have the protections of the lemon laws, one of which is that the problems have to start to arise within the first year that you own it, or maybe within the first 12,000 miles. Is that one of the criteria that you have to establish?
Yes, that's right. You have to bring the defect to the attention of the manufacturer, and typically the dealership, for that manufacturer within the first year or 12,000 miles.
And what do you have to establish in terms of proving that the car is defective? I mean, obviously, I would assume you have to give the dealership a reasonable opportunity to repair the problem that you've advised them or notified them about. But is this a repeated, consistent problem over a certain period of time that you have to show before it would qualify as defective?
Yes. Yes, typically you need to bring the vehicle back in for repair at least 3 times for the same defect, or if it's out of service for a total of 30 days for the same defect, it would qualify under the lemon law. And in fact, at that point, it would be presumed to be a lemon. It is important, and a lot of clients come to me and say, I took it to the dealership and they didn't do anything. Well, you need to get some sort of a record or receipt or an invoice of what the dealership did to be able to make your claims a bit more concrete.
Yeah, so to be clear, it's not a situation where if you have one problem and you take it in and you can claim my car is defective, I want you to take it back. That's not how it works.
That's right. Just having a few spots on your leather seat or having some trim piece fall off is not necessarily a qualification for the lemon law. It has to be something that substantially affects the use, safety, or value. A good example may be, your engine has to be rebuilt, or you've got a transmission problem, or you've got a wheel issue or something.
Those types of things.
Yeah. All right. Got a question coming up about certified pre-owned cars. I know that's a used car. We'll get to that question whenever we come back from this break. But first, a quick break as we head to break. A reminder, attorneys standing by live. Take advantage of that opportunity to get in touch with them. Also, don't forget, search Hollis Wright on social media. You'll find them there, Instagram, Twitter, as well as Facebook. Stay tuned. More of the attorneys coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm. Thank you for watching The Attorneys. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple. Provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury-related topics, you can call, email, or text us. Or you can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter, or simply contact us by going to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us link. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us watching The Attorneys.
Welcome back in to The Attorneys. Appreciate you being with us tonight. We're going to get right back into our conversation. But a reminder, the attorneys from Hollis Wright standing by live right now, free, confidential, off-air conversation. Just pick up the phone, give them a call. The number to text is 205-670-1949, or you can give them a call at 844-LAW-TALK, 844-529-8255. A question we've got here, you guys were just talking about these used cars not being able to be a limit. This is a certified pre-owned. A question about that. Said, I bought a certified pre-owned vehicle with a warranty. Now I'm told that there are major problems and is not covered by the warranty. So what recourse does this driver have?
Well, typically, when you go buy a certified pre-owned car, and we call those CPOs, you're trying to buy something that has a little bit more value, maybe a little bit more reliability, maybe a little bit more resale value. And the reason you are going to get a CPO is because the manufacturer is giving a special warranty for it. They're giving some sort of a history report showing supposedly the complete history of the car. And they are performing an inspection, the CPO inspection that is purportedly goes through the entire car and makes sure everything's okay and, typically repairs these problems. In my practice, I found that's not always the case. And sometimes the complete history of the car on Carfax is not necessarily the complete history. And that's something the clients come to me and they say, Mr. Donald, I got a Carfax, but it turns out there was a wreck a few months ago. What's going on here? Well, Carfax typically has a disclaimer that says this is only accurate as to what was reported to us. And so when a dealership gives you a Carfax, you need to be aware that that may not have the entire history. And Carfax may have it exactly right. That's what they knew about. But sometimes wrecks aren't reported, sometimes repairs aren't reported, and in some cases, these things are just under the radar.
Yeah, and a lot of times, though, these certified pre-owned vehicles, they have every appearance of being a new vehicle. They have very low mileage, and the dealers are kind of, I don't want to say representing them, but giving all signs and appearances that these are basically almost new vehicles. But as I understand it, the certified pre-owned vehicle would fall into the category of a used vehicle in terms of whether the lemon law would apply or not. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. It's not a new car, and typically it's going to have more than 12,000 miles, but most importantly, it's just not a new car. So your manufacturer warranty should apply. Most of the time, many manufacturers offer maybe an extension on that warranty. Every situation is different. This is very fact specific. And oftentimes the vehicle service contract might be applicable for that car also.
Yeah, and I would advise the person that asked that question that if they're in that situation, although the lemon law may not apply, I would really dig deep into the warranty situation and I would talk with the dealership because I would be very concerned about the representations that were made to me about the warranty and about the quality of the vehicle when all of a sudden I leave the lot and several weeks later I find out that there are major problems with it.
That's absolutely right. And I encourage my clients, if you aren't sure what's going on, take it to somebody else and have them take a look at it. Take it to a body shop or another mechanic to get a second opinion.
Can you talk a minute about the difference between a dealership warranty relative to a new automobile and a manufacturer's warranty on an automobile? And aren't those, they're two different types of warranties, but tell us a little bit about those types of warranties.
Okay, I think what you may be referring to is a manufacturer, let's say Ford, might give a warranty on a new car.
Correct.
And that new car, even when it's resold, might still have part of that warranty in effect. A dealership may give a warranty, and it always get those warranties in writing. If the dealership tells you, hey, I'll give you a 30-day warranty on it, that's not worth a whole lot. Make sure you get that in writing. But that's something that the dealership is going to have to carry out. You may be able to enforce it against them and you may not. Some dealerships, in fact many dealerships, will sell a vehicle service contract, which is not necessarily a warranty but more of a contract. We will fix these problems that are listed in the vehicle service contract, and then you may pay for part of it and we may pay for part of it.
What is a dealership's obligation, and we can distinguish between new and used automobiles, but what are the dealership's obligations in terms of disclosing damage or prior wrecks that the vehicle has been involved in? I know that a lot of these new cars are coming obviously from the manufacturer. They may get a minor scrape or a ding or something like that, but what are their obligations in terms of disclosure?
Okay. For a new car, the law in Alabama says that if it has sustained more than 3% of the MSRP in damage. And there are some carve-outs, but essentially if it had enough damage that it'd be 3% of the retail price, then they have to disclose that to you in writing.
That's for new vehicles, right?
That's right.
Okay.
What we found is sometimes a vehicle may be driven around for demonstration purposes and something of that nature, or being driven by an employee. And it may be in a wreck. Sometimes those are repaired by the body shop at the dealership or somewhere else. They don't show up on Carfax, and you believe you're buying a new car. Those should be disclosed in writing. If you think that's the case, I would go see a body shop about it.
Now, I haven't had this occurrence personally, but is there a law in Alabama that gives you the ability to return a purchased vehicle within, say, 3 or 5 days of purchase? You just make a decision that you don't want it anymore? Are you familiar with that area of law at all?
I hear that a lot,
Okay.
But in reality, unless you have a contract with a dealership that says that, you're not going to be able to take the car back.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about odometers. I know that is a hot or right topic of conversation in your area of practice, and I was actually surprised at how often it appears that people are manipulating or changing odometers in vehicles. I didn't know how easy or how difficult that is. You've obviously got to have some technical expertise, but are you seeing that in your legal practice at all?
Yes, we actually get a number of calls about odometer issues, and you can find YouTube videos on the internet about how easy it is to roll these back, the little digital numbers. It's not a matter of jacking up the back of the car and
like
running
they did in Ferris Bueller, where they just reverse the vehicle to try and take 100 miles off of it?
I'm sure you can do that, but these days you plug a computer into it. And it's also easy just to replace the entire odometer cluster. And the mileages are going to be different. Federal law says that if you change the mileage in the odometer, you have to put an emblem on the car signifying that it has been replaced and it is not the actual mileage. So when a dealership sells a car, or when anybody sells a car, the value of that car is tied in closely to the mileage. Having an unknown mileage is going to drastically reduce the value of the car. We've seen new and used cars that we believe the odometer was changed on.
Well, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, I want to talk about the types of damages that a person can claim if they have a legitimate lemon law claim.
All right, with that, let's step aside. This is our final break of the evening. If you want to join the conversation, you got about one more segment for that to happen, so take advantage of that opportunity. Stay with us. We've got more of the attorneys coming right up. We'll be right back.
I'm Drew McNutt with the law firm of Hollis, Wright. We often get asked what happens if someone is injured by a motorist who doesn't have any insurance coverage. In tonight's Legal 411, we will address uninsured motorist coverage. Under Alabama law, all automobile policies issued must provide uninsured motorist coverage unless the name insured rejects the coverage in writing. If you purchase this coverage and you are injured by an uninsured driver, you can make a claim against your own insurance company to compensate you for the injuries caused by an uninsured or underinsured driver. While liability insurance is required by state law, it is estimated that over 20% of the motorists in Alabama do not have any coverage at all. Uninsured motorist coverage provides you with the ability to protect yourself and your family in the event you are injured or killed by one of these uninsured drivers. If you are concerned about whether you're covered, I recommend that you check your declarations page or contact your insurance agent to discuss your coverage options. If you do not have uninsured motorist coverage, consider adding it. And if you do have it, discuss increasing your limits. Oftentimes, you can purchase hundreds of thousands in coverage for less than $100 a year. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on the real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys on WVTM 13.
Welcome back into the attorneys. This is our final segment, just over 8 minutes remaining in the show. So take advantage of that opportunity to speak with an attorney, a live attorney. Well, they are live, but they're also standing by live off air, so you can give them a call. A question we've got here, is a dealership responsible for revealing if a used vehicle has been involved in an accident?
My personal feeling is yes. I think anything material, important to that deal, the transaction, should be disclosed. Most of the time, in my experience, they don't. It's important that you ask a dealership, has this vehicle been wrecked before? Okay. And if they say something like, not to my knowledge, you need to probe a little bit deeper. You might ask to have it taken to a body shop or to have a mechanic look at it. Because in Alabama, the general rule is buyer beware.
Are you finding that most people, including dealerships and buyers, are just kind of universally accepting what is in or contained in these Carfax reports?
Much of the time, the dealership will present you, in my experience, with a Carfax and saying this is what the history of the car is. I think a lot of people take that just on its face
as
and
gospel.
Wants to believe it, but I don't believe that's always true.
Yeah. Let's talk about damages for a minute. So let's say somebody believes they have a lemon for a vehicle. They've gone through the steps of going back and forth to the dealership, giving them an opportunity to try and correct the problems. What are their options at that point? Should they demand that the dealership just take back the vehicle?
In a lemon law lawsuit or in a claim, the real person who's supposed to be giving you relief, in other words, helping you with this, is the manufacturer. Typically, they work through the dealership, who is sort of our interface with that manufacturer. You have to give the manufacturer a written notice of your claim under the lemon law. This is where I think an attorney comes in useful, because they typically know what needs to be said to the manufacturer, and you have to give them a final repair attempt. At that point, if the manufacturer can't fix the problem, then under the lemon law, you would be entitled to, and this is just generally speaking, to everything you've paid on that car, the cost of the car, taxes, title, insurance, well, maybe not insurance, but interest and other cost. You should be entitled to the cost of filing a lawsuit under the lemon law, and your attorney's fees should be paid as part of that.
And where are these claims typically filed? Are they subject to the arbitration provision in the contracts or the purchase agreements that are entered into between the dealer and the purchaser? Are they pursued in courts?
Sometimes, typically the arbitration agreement is going to be between the dealership and you, or perhaps the finance company and you, the buyer. The manufacturer will sometimes have its own arbitration agreement, and they may have some provision in the contract that would require you to do so. Most of the lemon law cases we file are in state court.
Where do the disputes typically lie in these cases? Is it a situation where the dealer or the manufacturer is contending that the person did not give them a reasonable opportunity to fix the vehicle, and the vehicle can be fixed? And what are the other types of disputes that are present in these cases?
Sometimes it is a notice issue. The manufacturer may say, we didn't have any idea what was going on. The dealership may not always be corresponding with the manufacturer about that. In other cases, it's that the problems you're having aren't severe enough that it would qualify for the lemon law. And sometimes there's just a little bit of nickel and diming about how much the manufacturer may have to reimburse you for it.
And what is your sense of how dealerships or manufacturers respond to these types of lemon law claims? And I mean, even before they get to you or even after they get to you, are they typically resolved with just a return of the vehicle and a reimbursement of all of the purchase price and all of the expenses and items that you mentioned a minute ago?
That's the resolution we look for. One of the biggest issues we've seen lately is the computerization of cars. There's nothing simple in a car these days, and there's one or more computer systems that run everything in the car, from the air conditioning to the, the electronic controls and the engine, the transmission, and everything. So when these things go wrong, it doesn't always happen when you take it to the dealership, and sometimes having proof of this problem and showing it to the manufacturer is a that's a way the manufacturer can say this is not subject to the limit law. We don't have to reimburse you for this.
Let's talk a little bit about financing, because obviously the vast majority of individuals out there, whether they're purchasing a new car or a used automobile, they're going to be financing the payments on the vehicle. And one of the questions that we have here concerns an individual buying a vehicle. They think they financed it, they think everything's good to go, and then 2 or 3 weeks down the road they get a call from the dealership, and the dealership says the financing fell through, you've got to bring the vehicle back. Can they do that, and does that happen often?
We get more calls for that than just about anything else. I call that a yo-yo car sale. The dealerships often call this a spot delivery, and the reason I call it a yo-yo is because the dealership lets the consumer go, the buyer go with a car, and then they pull them back in later. And sometimes they say you need to sign new papers. Sometimes they just say your financing fell through. The dealership is not actually going to be the bank in most cases. You're not going to make your payments to the dealership, but to some other third party, like could be Regions, Wells Fargo, Credit Acceptance, Santander, or some other finance company. And the dealership wants to make the customer believe they've bought the car right there so they don't go shop somewhere else. And they'll sign all the documents, and by all intents and purposes, the customer is told and believes they've bought that car. So generally, they're pretty shocked when the dealership calls them and says, it's not your car, bring it back.
Yeah, so once they get them on the hook, then they bring them back in, they got to return the car. Maybe they've sold the car that they traded in, and so basically they're going to wind up putting them in a different car, maybe with less favorable terms.
Typically, there's not a different car in the mix. Typically, that person is not going to get financed. Sometimes this is legal. It depends on what the contracts often say, but sometimes the dealerships will keep the trade-in, keep the down payment, or, you know, that's a real legal claim the customer has.
That's why you need to get an attorney to help you.
Somebody like Thomas Donald.
Yeah. Almost out of time. 1:20 remaining in the show. I want to give both of you the opportunity for a final thought, and if you would, you go first, please, sir.
Okay. Well, I think I would suggest for anybody who goes out to buy a car, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. We hear a lot of people say that this was the last car like this ever, and they had to buy it, but it turns out to be a real problem. I would also recommend that everybody make sure they read the documents, they ask questions, they don't just take an ambiguous answer, and I don't know, but they find out the real truth. If it's a used car, go get it inspected.
Yeah, asking questions and reading documents is of paramount importance when you're in these types of transactions. I know the individual is excited to be buying an automobile. They're hit with 2 or 3 pages of legal terminology that they're overwhelmed with. But ask the salesperson to go get a cup of coffee, give you an opportunity to read the documents so you can fully understand the documents. And don't be shy. Ask questions if you have questions, because information is power, especially in these transactions.
Absolutely. Some relevant advice. Appreciate the time. Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. Everybody can relate to that. Well? Y'all both did great. Y'all did fantastic. I feel much better informed for sure. Hey, we're out of time. I want to thank you also for being with us tonight. Thanks so much as we wrap things up, the way you can still get in touch with the firm Hollis Wright. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you next time on The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.